Hello, good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to open the activities this afternoon and to have with us Professor William Cope, our keynote speaker, who is going to talk to us about transcending social distance, the remote, and the online in social learning. To introduce our keynote speaker and mediate the discussion, I would like to invite Professor Viviane Heberle from the Federal University of Santa Catarina and Junia Braga from the Federal University of Minas Gerais to join us to conduct the activities. Welcome, Junia and Viviane, and welcome, Professor Bill.
All right. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to be here with Junia, Susie, and especially with Bill Cope. It's a pleasure to see you again, Bill. And so before you start your lecture, I'd like to tell people a little bit about yourself. William Cope is professor in the Department of Educational Policy Studies at the University of Illinois and at Globalism Institute, RMIT University, Melbourne, and director at Common Ground Publishing. His research interests include theories and practices of pedagogy, cultural and linguistic diversity, and new technologies of representation and communication. His recent research has focused on the development of digital writing and assessment technologies. With Mary Galantis, he has co-authored and co-edited a series of books and articles, including Ubiquitous Learning from University of Illinois Press, 2009, A Pedagogy of Multiliteracies from Palgrave, 2016, New Media and Productive Diversity in Learning, also from 2016, and E-Learning Ecologies, Principles for New Learning and Assessment from Routledge, 2017. I'd like to tell everyone, so it's a pleasure for us to have you here with us. Thank you all for also being here with us. Thank Junia for sharing this commitment that we have now. And we like to ask everyone to send the questions, please, in English, because it will be easier for everybody, all right? So, Bill, now we'll have 1 hour among us. So approximately 40 minutes for your talk, 45 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions, all right? So thank you again for accepting our invitations.
Thank you, Dr. Cope. You have the floor.
Well, thank you very much. I hope everybody can hear me okay. It's one of the strange things of these video conferences, which is you're talking to a screen and you can just see 1 or 2 people. So, but we've got used to living in this strange world because it's been a year now, or more than a year. How long is it since this COVID stuff has happened to us? So much of what we do is online. So even before COVID, all my students at the University of Illinois, most of whom are teachers or people who work in higher ed, who are doing master's degrees and doctorates, they're all online anyhow. But since COVID, so much more of the world's gone online and we've spent so much more time in these virtual environments, which is kind of what I want to talk about. What are the impacts of these virtual environments and what's the frame of reference for understanding the impact of digital technologies on learning? And what I have here today is a kind of a presentation where I play through these ideas with a PowerPoint, but also I'll take you into some work that we've been doing. A lot of you may know we've been building an e-learning environment which hopefully gets around a lot of the problems of e-learning environments. So e-learning environments are less than perfect, and we're trying to address some of those problems and do something which is a bit better. It's an environment called Scholar, and I'll show you into some of that a little bit later in the talk. But what I'm going to do first is I am going to go to my PowerPoint slides and then I'll jump across to the web. So I'll be jumping backwards and forwards a little bit, so you'll just have to bear with me because I'm not entirely familiar with this platform. So I'm going to go now to share and share screen. Just give me 1 second. And I need to select a window, which I have just done. And this is the PowerPoint. And hopefully everybody can see that. For goodness sake, Scream if you can't. So this is the thing, neither present nor distant, the remote and the online in social learning. And what I want to do is I want to say the word remote and the word online, they mean quite different things. And this is work that Mary and I have been doing for a number of years. So I'm, in a way, speaking for both of us. So, definitions. Online learning. Learning interactions supported by connected digital devices. That's how we're going to define online. And remote, learning at a distance in space. Now, in fact, going back to this definition, we can have our learning interactions supported by connected digital devices with in-person learning as well, and we may want to do that. Remote is narrowly learning at a distance in space, and of course a lot of that's happened lately, not just because of COVID, but in order to make education more accessible for different types of demographics, all different types of people. And then the other one I want to define is the virtual, which means the distance in space and time. Now, in a way, the virtual's not at all new. You know, writing was about the virtual. You wrote a letter and you sent it to somebody and they weren't in the same space and they weren't at the same time. So the kind of existential experience of making meaning and expressing that meaning, communicating that meaning, representing that meaning, is that we have in online environments and in remote learning, in fact, tracks right back to the devices we've made as human beings to communicate across space and time, unlike other creatures who have not been able to do that. So in a way, there are these relationships between these three things. So online is not a synonym for remote. And there are two modalities for online. In-person, in other words, using online to support in-person learning. And I'm going to argue that it won't be long before that's more or less essential. You know, we really have to do that because there are a whole lot of virtues and benefits in the online which are becoming as necessary as pens and paper and textbooks used to be a generation ago. And of course the other modality is remote learning online, and what the online does, it actually provides access in a way that wasn't possible before. And the reason why this semantics is important is that the online infrastructure and the pedagogical potentials are the same for both in-person and remote. So when we're talking about online, we're talking about what might we achieve in both of these modalities. Now, a little bit of a background about online education, a short version of a surprisingly long history. This particular project happens to be the University of Illinois. One of the reasons, people might know I'm from Australia originally, so if you're finding it hard to understand what I'm saying, it's because I have an Australian accent. So,
Professor
Yes.
William Cope, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but we can't see your, we see your presentation, but I guess you needed to switch it for full screen. I guess you are rolling the scenes, but we can't see them. It's still in the first one, in the PowerPoint presentation,
Okay, well, I'm now 6 or 8 slides in. So why would that be? I will stop sharing and try to share again. And see
Yeah, please, maybe, yeah, I guess it would be
Yep.
nice. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. So let me just go here again. I'm glad you said that because I'll go back over things again.
Yeah, because
If we
I
can get-
realized you were talking about some other aspects, but it was still the first one.
Look, it's definitely the correct window.
You can go on sharing and screen.
And I'm going to select a window or a screen. You know what I'll do? I will go back and I'll share the entire screen, and that way you will see, and I'll get rid of myself. Now, do you see the image?
We have this image of a woman and.
Okay. I'll go back to the.
Okay, great.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm now sharing the whole screen as opposed to a window. So, all right then. I must say I've had this problem with this particular video thing before. So, so here we go. Online learning interaction supported by connected digital devices. And folks, I mean, I can leave you with this PowerPoint. Oh, well, there'll be a YouTube recording of it. I can leave you with this PowerPoint. Remote learning at a distance in space. The virtual, meaning at a distance in space and time. modalities, and we might want online for both in-person and remote. That was the point that I was just making. And I was now moving on to the thing about this short version of a surprisingly long history. So these here, it just happens that I'm here at the University of Illinois. As I was mentioning, I'm from Australia originally, but one of the things that attracted us to come here is this long history of educational innovation at this university. And in fact, this system, which was called Plato, the development began in 1959. And over on the right, we've got the first plasma screen, which was actually in the mid-1960s. And then, so in other words, you know, this stuff's not new. It's taken a long while to develop, and it's been gradually moving on in that time. Then another big milestone is 1998. So again, here at the University of Illinois, a student, in fact, invented Mosaic, the world's first web browser, which is over there on the right in 1993. And then in 1998, we had the world's first fully online degree. And as a matter of fact, I teach in the world's first fully online degree from 1998. That's the Learning Design Leadership program is what I teach in. And this is my program, but again, just to tell you about where that's gone, on the right is my program website in 2017 when I launched the first fully online doctorate at our university. But I put all my courses in Coursera as well. And our university, actually, that number's out of date. It's now had well over 5 million enrolments. But in my courses, these 9 courses there on the left, I've had about 150,000 students. And what this affords a new level of access. So before, it was an expensive business, which only the privileged could have really, which was to come here and do a degree at the University of Illinois. But you can actually do all these courses for free, or if you pay $49, Coursera will give you what's called a verified certificate. So what we have is that, you know, more than half of the people who do our courses in the MOOC platform on the left-hand side are from developing countries who, for one reason or other, either couldn't get here or you have to be incredibly lucky to get some sort of scholarship to get here to the university. So it's opened a lot of access to people who didn't have them before. And by the way, folks, if any of you would like to do these courses, these are the same courses that we teach with our students, except in a self-paced kind of MOOC format mode. Now, 2020, COVID arrives, and suddenly everyone is remote. And in a way, what we hit then was what I would call a crisis that was bound to come, which is, look, yeah, not everybody can access higher education, and we want a lot more people to access it. And it's expensive to provide. So if we can provide these ways where people can stay with their families, stay with their children, keep working while they're learning, many more people will be able to access learning. But the other thing is resourcing, which is, you know, education's expensive. How do we provide much more access with limited resources? Now, I'm not saying the limited resources are a good thing; they're a terrible thing. But it's one of our obligations to think how we as educators can meet the needs of more people with the resources that we have, and this is one way to do it. And the third crisis is a different kind of a crisis, which is what I call an attentional crisis. So, you know, I got to confess, I can't sit in a meeting now without jumping backwards and forwards, or sit in a lecture without jumping backwards and forwards, sometimes unproductively, looking at my emails or looking at Facebook, sometimes productively, where, you know, the person giving the lecture or talking in the meeting mentions a book, and I go over to Amazon and look up the book, or I look it up in the library or something or other. So I must admit, I find myself at a loose end without a smartphone or a laptop with me. And in a way, what we've got to resign ourselves now to is the fact that we are much used to higher cognitive and attentional loads than we were ever used to in the past. And anything else, sitting and listening to a lecture is pretty darn boring. Or in a class discussion where one person talks at a time is pretty darn boring, because don't forget on Facebook and Twitter, everybody talks together, and you can talk whenever you want to, and it goes into the stream. So, you know, I just think there's a cultural crisis we're about to have where traditional modes of delivery are going to become less acceptable and more, well, let's just say boring, you know. But the question for me then is more than just to support remote, what can online contribute to learning generally? And what I've got here, and again, I always like thinking of these historically, I've got some little images here of some founding artifacts. So this is one of the classical artifacts of education, which is otherwise known as the lecture, you know, which is and in a way the modern college, the modern university came out of Western monasticism, and here's St. Benedict, who invented the monastery in its medieval form, and then became university colleges. You know, and he said, look, it belongeth the master to speak and teach, and becometh the disciple to sit silent and to listen. This is the lecture. This is when it was invented. So this is one of my arguments, actually. This is a play off what's happening in the whole world of online learning and social distancing, which is what we had to do in the environment of COVID, is that actually sitting and listening to a lecture when you can't talk to the person beside you, you are distant, right? There is social distance even though you're close enough to get a germ from the person beside you. So this is a kind of an argument about this is a distancing procedure where the students are distant from the lecturer because not many can say much or interrupt or whatever, and they certainly can't talk to each other. So here we are together, but we're actually at a distance. The other artifact of modern education, so one's the classroom, this is the next artifact, which is the textbook. And in fact, this is a page from the most published person in early modern Europe, who's now totally forgotten, a man by the name of Petrus Ramus, who in fact, in a way, invented the textbook. So in the first century, I mean, he was publishing in the 16th century. He was the most published person of the 16th century, 1,000 editions of his work. And this is a couple of pages in an English translation from Euclid, Geometry. And it's got the classical structure of a textbook, which is point 8 is this, point 9 is this, and there's a diagram. So he'd taken Euclid and he had systematized it. He put it in this spatial, logical order where you went from the harder things to the simpler things, to the harder things and so on. But again, this was also about a certain kind of social distance. You know, you sat in the room each reading the textbook or you took it home and read it. It wasn't something you did together with other learners. It was it was the isolated reader working with this textbook and working their way through the course. Social distance number 2. And then social distance number 3, here's the test. So obviously in the test you're not to talk to anybody, hence this image. You're not to look anything up, which is the social context of knowledge. No, you can't refer to that. It's only what's inside your lonely individual head. And in fact, it's not even that, it's just what you can remember. So it's really a test of long-term memory, and my definition of long-term is until the day after the test. And this is actually measuring separated brains when in fact we do knowledge together, we bounce off each other, we look things up, and particularly in the digital era, we look things up, we rely on looking things up. Why would you bother remembering a lot of detail when you can look things up and think things through at a higher kind of level? So this is what we call didactic pedagogy. Didactic in English, unlike in languages like Portuguese, has a kind of a negative connotation, which is an authority person telling you things, if you know what I mean. So this is the classical architecture of where you're close in space, but socially distant. It's a kind of hub and spoke model. It's a wheel there. And people, of course, critique that. You know, John Dewey called it transmission learning. Paulo Freire called it banking education. But it's also a generic model. Everybody's listening to the same lecture at the same time. Everybody is on the same page in the textbook, and everybody's doing the same test, standardized learning. And guess what? Online learning arrives, and nothing happens. Here we are. All the kids are in a row still. They're all doing their own individualized work. Same page, it's like a textbook might as well be. And in fact, on the right, this is a 1950s version of a mechanical teaching machine where, again, the kid is on their own answering questions. And so the issue is sometimes when we go online, we go from bad to worse. We take those old artifacts and we fossilize them, if you like. So video lectures might as well be St. Benedict. E-textbooks might as well be Petrus Ramus. Online tests might as well be the old print tests that we used to have. So in other words, we can represent online the distancing that's intrinsic to didactic pedagogies. We can mechanize this, if you like. We can industrialize it with online learning. Now, this is all a preliminary to what I really want to say, but I just wanted to do that as a way of setting the background. So we've been trying to think, okay, what can we do in online learning which is different? What can we do which is enhances the learning experience and uses technology to create something better and new, which doesn't simply replicate old pedagogical forms. And I hope this is going to work. I'm going to stop sharing now and go to the web and show you into this Scholar environment that we've been working on. So let me go stop sharing, and let's hope this works, folks. I'm going to go share, and I'm going to go share screen, and I'm going to go here, select window screen, and here, allow. Now, folks, can you see that page there with a picture of a landscape with some clouds?
Yeah, it's okay. It's on.
Yes, yes, yes.
And you can't see anything else around it. It fills the screen.
It's all right. It's all right.
But you don't see two. Just sorry, I need to clarify. You don't see two screens, do you? You don't see trees. You don't see create an account written twice.
No.
Okay, good. Because for me, it's a window inside a window, and I just want to check that you're not seeing two windows, and otherwise it's going to be too small for you. Yeah, normal with other platforms you can see a border around what's being highlighted. So I can't here. Again, just to confirm, you can only see this CG Scholar logo in one place.
Yep.
Yep, great. Okay. Sorry, because I can see it in two, that's all. What I'm seeing is not the same as you, so I just wanted to be sure that I know what you're seeing. Okay, so what I've done is this is a web-based environment. Lots of it are just open. Go and create an account, do what you like. It's open. If you want to use some of the more advanced features, you're quite welcome. Contact us. So just to give you a sense of what we're trying to achieve with this, we've built this with a number of grants that we've had from the US Department of Education and the National Science Foundation and the Gates Foundation. So we've had funding to build this thing over a number of years, and we manage it with a not-for-profit that we have. When people can afford to pay for some of the more advanced features, that's hugely appreciated because it costs money to keep the lights on with these kinds of environments. But for you folks, if you want to use all of it, we can arrange that as well. Okay, so I'm going to, let's say I go to log in now, and I've opened a couple of tabs so you don't have to watch stuff spinning. When I log in, the first thing I see is an area called community, where we don't want conventional classrooms. So we call these things communities, not classrooms. And in fact, a community might be a few students in a class, or it might be multiple classes. So that's our basic concept. So, and in those communities, we don't have friends or followers. It's kind of a social media environment, but the social media logic of friends and followers, that's a bad idea. We have an idea that we call peers. And what we've done is we've created in here, this is an activity stream of all the stuff that's happening with my peers and in my communities. And what we've created in here is a kind of a hybrid between a blog and social media. So I'm going to go into one of these communities, this one here, in fact, I'm going to go into, which is a course that I'm teaching at the moment. And when I go into that course, there's lots of activity going on, but I've actually clicked down to one piece of activity. So this is what we do to replace the video lecture of the kind that you saw of the kind that's so common at the moment. So firstly, we've got a number of little videos here in this course, which are all 6 to 9 minutes long. So you can watch a little bit and go back. So yes, there are lessons to be learned from the video world. And these are videos that, that Mary and I have made as part of our course, and where we talk through this one. Here's a kind of a summary. And this one's only 2 minutes, a little 2-minute summary. But the really important thing is that what we ask people to do is to comment on, how does the assessment, and what happens is down below, everybody comments. So unlike where most people are silent most of the time, we can say to everybody, look, please, everyone must comment. And what they've done is they've said something quite substantial, and often, I don't know whether there's an example here, they start talking to each other as well. So in other words, what we've done is the conventional pattern of classroom discourse is, one very keen student puts up their hand, and the teacher chooses the keen student, hoping, and the keen student tries to guess the right answer, and then it's over, and the rest of the students sit silent, a la, St. Benedict. So what we try to do is change that discursive relationship where everybody can speak, and the people who are reluctant to speak, not only does it give them a bit of a time to think about what they're going to say because other people are also speaking, but also it gives them, time to formulate their thoughts, so they become a little less reluctant. But we can say, you've got to do it. We're going to assess you. So please, you must comment on this. Next thing we do, and this is in the same course, we get people to contribute content. So this is somebody, and I just happened to pull this up because it was there from yesterday or the day before. This is one of our students who speaks about Grammarly. People might know that Grammarly is a spelling and a checking program. And she says, look, there are lots of problems with Grammarly. And she puts in a video about Grammarly that she's found on the web here, and she comments about it, and she finds a bit of research about, the use of these things in ESL, language learning classrooms. Is Grammarly a good thing or a bad thing? And then other people are talking to her about that. Now, in fact, I don't use Grammarly. I don't know a lot about it. I use other tools, to help me when I'm doing writing, but I don't use Grammarly. I don't know much about it. So in fact, she's contributed to our class stuff that she knows, and in a way the students become co-designers, co-content and co-knowledge producers in this environment. So what we're doing is we're trying to, make it a much more community-based, peer-to-peer kind of experience. So that's talking about the way in which we run our classroom discussions in community. If I move on now to this second space, what you've got to imagine is this is kind of like a word processor space. Now I'm reading a student work, so the toolbar is not there. Very simple toolbar where I can add in videos and images. And look, this is what a 21st century essay looks like. They've put in some pictures, they've put in a video. Look, there's B.F. Skinner talking about the funny stuff that he did in the world of behaviorism. They've put in some infographics, they put in another video here. So this is about, what's the best for everybody, and there's some academic references down the bottom. So, and by the way, this ends up on their profile page. But the most important thing is this piece of knowledge work is collaborative. It's done with other students. So while they're doing the work, there's a review rubric here, but 2 students reviewed this. That's the overall score they gave. And by the way, to give it a score, I pull this over, I look at the rubric, and then I write something in, and that's the summary. This person made a pile of comments. By the way, I can talk back on the comments as the instructor, and the student can talk back. This is the next person, pile of comments, and there's a lot of annotations in here, not on this, on an earlier version, lots of detailed comments in the way, and then they created a new version. But what I can see, unlike cheating, remember the picture of assessment where people had the blinkers so they couldn't cheat, we're encouraging people to help each other, and the final version is after a lot of peer review and peer feedback along the way. So the aim here is not me to do my individual work, but us to do collaborative knowledge work together in the classroom. Then this is one of the big things we do. We then data mine all that activity. So every student has one of these visualizations of what's going on. So, and in fact, this is the whole whole class visualization. So, but everyone has their own visualization for their own work, just like this. And look, these are all the comments they've made, the updates they've made. These are the peer reviewed, many measures of interaction. And in fact, what we can do is you click on any one of these here, and this is the peer review scores, explain exactly how the machine has calculated off a lot of human activity what a person's contribution has been. And we have in here 3 measures: knowledge, which is things that you can demonstrate you know; focus, which is the amount of work you put in. But we also have a help measure. The scores the peers have given you for your reviews of reviews. So we're on 20 different things, a whole lot of knowledge activity that you've had in the community. And by the way, at the end of this was an 8-week course, another one of my courses. There were 12,600 pieces of feedback, machine feedback and peer feedback. Imagine that, a teacher giving 12,000 pieces of feedback. Impossible. And in fact, this group of students was 50 or 60. We built this visualization on 3.1 million data points. So what we've got in the back here is we've got in the background something called learning analytics. So that's just to give you a little sense of what, and by the way, I want to tell you a funny thing. My analytics were processed 21. So
Hello.
12, 14 hours late, and people get upset, and I say, normally you wouldn't find out your grade till the end of the course, and now you're getting it 12 hours later. So anyhow, that's just a funny story. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back and stop sharing and draw some conclusions. I'm really quite near the end of this talk, so I hope I can successfully go back to the PowerPoint. Let me see if I can pull that trick off. So I'm going to go here to the share, and if I share the entire screen, I will be back in the PowerPoint, because in fact the PowerPoint's on the entire screen, and there we go. Now, folks, can you see the PowerPoint again?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's all right.
Yes.
Great. Okay, conclusions. I've got a list of 5.1 training, 5+1 learning transformations that I think, and the +1 is a different kind of transformation. So I've got 5 things that we can change using these online tools, whether they are supporting in-person classes or whether they're supporting remote learning. So, and the 6th, by the way, is about teaching. The first 5 are about learning, and the 6th one's about teaching. So, and you can see where I'm going on the list there. So I'm going to go through those one by one. So what we've got here is we've got peer review discussion forums and object-oriented learning. What I mean by that is we're looking at the knowledge artifacts you've made. We're not trying to second guess what's in your head. We're looking at those artifacts. And we're also interested in the collaborative mind. So see the diagram there? It's not a hub and spoke model. There's arrows going in both directions. And what the teacher does as much as anything is coordinate the community interactions between students. That's a big shift in the architecture. So we're building a knowledge community, and we're obviously interested in privacy and safety and transparency and social learning. Okay. The next thing is about equitable learning, and this is what tests conventionally did, and this idea of a bell curve was in fact invented by Henry Goddard at Princeton University in the 1920s. So the average person was 100 on an IQ test. This is an IQ test distributed here, and on an IQ test, by the way, and in English these are words of offensive words, don't use them. 0 to 25 was an idiot, 26 to 50 was an imbecile, 51 to 70 is a moron, and those distinctions, what's more stupid than the other person has lost on me, to be quite frank. But I'm telling you, now we quite like the smart end of this. We still have above average and gifted and genius. We like using those words. But you know, one of the tragedies of this is that when we operate with a bell curve, we work on the assumption that everybody coming into the class needs to be put, you know, everybody can succeed. But by the end of the class, we need to make them unequal, right? Now, why can't we have a class where incrementally they're watching their analytics and we say, look, you can all get to the target we've put there, you can all reach that target. But just keep working at it. Work at it incrementally, and we're hoping you all do reach that target rather than wanting to judge you in this kind of way. And this idea is actually an old idea. Mastery learning. Stop insisting on inequality of outcomes. Allow the possibility of equality of outcomes. Engaged learning. So we, as you can see in that environment, we've got students very, very actively building knowledge and interacting with each other about knowledge. They're doing peer-reviewed projects, they're posting updates. And, you know, traditionally in learning, a lot of what students are is knowledge consumers and not equally knowledge producers. Our argument is they have to be equally that. It's Freire's notion of banking education as well. And also what we can do, and by the way, this image here is from a medical student. And also, I need to say the Scholar environment can be used now to about grade 4, but this happens to be a medical student here. But also what we can do is we can have learning which is embedded in life and engaged with, if it's remote, engaged with community activities, or even in the classroom where the learners bring in their own identities and life experiences, and that's part of the learning. Now, deep learning. You can see here that with rubrics, we've got people thinking at a high level of generality about knowledge work, if you like. So what we do with traditional cognitively based approaches is we're interested in the long-term memory of facts and correct application of procedures. You know, did you get the sum right, for example? And this is a kind of mentalism. We're expecting everything to be stuff that you can, thinking through cognitively. But what we've got here is an environment where I believe we can have more complicated, higher order thinking, creative, critical and design thinking, thinking in action. These environments, it might be possible to do that. Then finally, in terms of the learning changes, recursive learning, which is small feedback loops. So you get a bit of feedback and you go back and you improve something. You get a peer review report and you revise your work and that produces a new score. So in other words, what we've done here with this Scholar environment is we've built something where incrementally you can reach those achievements. By the way, the circumference of the circle is the settings that the admin or the teacher has put in for the learning objectives, and the petals, the width of the petal is the weighting of sub-objectives, and the length the petal's gone is how far you have gone towards meeting those objectives. And you know what we do in our courses? We say, look, 80 is an A and 85 is an A plus, and go for it. It's up to you. And if everyone gets A's or A pluses, so be it. And if for some reason you decide to bail out part of the way and you get a lower grade, you saw it happening. It wasn't not a surprise to you. So what we want to do is we want to end the distinction between formative and summative assessment. We want every data point to be something which can be acted upon, actionable. And then all summative assessment is a retrospective view of incremental progress. That's all it is. And also what we want to do is we want assessment to be embedded in the work. So everything is being assessed. Every single thing you do in the course, because it's recorded in this digital environment, is being assessed. So we want to even end that distinction. It's assessment which is so thoroughly embedded in learning that you don't need a test at the end. We've got so much data there. And so this is one of our visions. Learning analytics replaces conventional assessment. And what we're also working on at the moment with our technology colleagues at the university is artificial intelligence and machine learning, where the machine can contribute in a constructive way to this process as well. And so this changes the job of teachers. So 1 to 5 are about learning, but teachers are doing a new job. They're curating content, they're creating learning communities, managing data-rich feedback systems. So it changes the work that we do as teachers. So my conclusion, and look at that, I'm more or less on time for this, is the future of online learning is the future for all learning. And if you want to, we have a Facebook page and a Twitter handle, and also there is, you can go and sign into Scholar, and in Scholar there's a community called New Learning. Go and join that, which is where we post updates on the research that we're doing. So that is, I'm going to stop sharing and say over to you folks for questions and comments and thoughts and suggestions.
Oh, thank you very much. It was really wonderful. I was just checking here on the possible questions, and let's see. I can get it. I'm sorry. I can get, because I had a problem with my connection, my internet connection, but all right. So if you, Ricardo or Junia, if you have any comments, I click on the link. Okay, this is one question. You can see, maybe you can see it there, Bill, yourself. Do you believe that it's necessary to establish some politeness protocols when using the peer review activity in online collaborative learning? This is one question that we have.
Okay, yeah, that's a very good question, actually. So what we do is we have not just peer reviews, but reviews of reviews. So what you do is you give feedback to the reviewer and you rate the reviewer, and that's part of the score. So it's a bit like, you know, on e-commerce sites and whatever, that the reviews that are regarded most helpful go to the top of the list, and things that are not helpful kind of drop out. So what we do is we include as part of the assessment the reviewers, the original creators' review of the review, both as a score and with comments. That's the first thing. The second thing is we also have a kind of an alert system, whereas if somebody thinks, and it's actually, what's surprising is how rare this is. You can alert the teacher and the admin directly in the system. You can flag things that are problematic and that are a worry. So yes, you do need to prevent bullying, and you need to have systems to prevent bullying. What's really interesting, actually, is the extent to which these environments depend on mutuality, and depend on, and people get into the swing of that after a while. You know, we find there's very little that happens in here which is destructive or offensive or hurtful. But you do need to build the environment to be that way. And as I say, the two measures that we have are review the reviewer and also a flagging mechanism. So they're good questions, Simone.
Yes, we have another question here. Ronaldo Gomes asks, what is your view on the relationship between the community design and the learner's autonomy?
Right. So one of the things you don't want is unrestricted autonomy, right? So, you know, let me give you an example of that. I don't know, you know, this is a Google Doc. This is exactly what I'm saying. So if everybody had access here to a Google Doc, or if learners all have access to a Google Doc, it's the chaotic jumping cursor. That's what I call it, the chaotic jumping cursor. So in other words, what we need to do is things which are completely unstructured are also not helpful in educational terms. They're helpful in social media, they're helpful for a whole lot of things, but they're not necessarily helpful in learning. So what you need is you need to scaffold those relationships around peer review criteria. You need to keep preceding versions of things so you can see the way in which reviews have influenced the work, none of which you can do in Google Docs. So one of the keys is building pedagogical scaffolds. So the learners have a high degree of autonomy, but nevertheless, where there is structure and order to those relationships, right? So does that make a bit of sense, Ronaldo? Would you'd like to? And by the way, our argument is actually for a balance of agency. It's not completely that the agency of the teacher goes, or the agency of the designer of the environment, or the coordinator, or the word we use is admin, by the way, which is the web idea. The person who's coordinating the environment we call an admin, so the teacher is an admin. So it's a kind of a balance of agency between the admins and the participants, the community members. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. There's another one by Jeanette Arndt. She says that Scholar is the best way to build collaborative work and knowledge I've ever seen, and it may facilitate the teacher's work with assessment. Can any teacher create a course at Scholar?
Yes, so hello, Jeanette. Jeanette was actually here for a while, so you're saying thank you for saying those nice things, and yeah, so and I think I saw you again at a conference year before last, so nice to hear from you again and to see you again. Yes, you can, and what I didn't show you is that we have an artifact called a learning module, which is how you scaffold a course. So what a learning module consists of: content that can be delivered into the community. It involves prompts for students to make their own posts on particular topics. It has peer-reviewed projects where you can set up the prompt and design the peer-review rubric, and it has two types of things we call surveys: a knowledge survey, which can have right or wrong answers, like a select response assessment, and a more open-ended opinion survey, which is a bit like a supply response assessment. So yes, teachers can create any of those, and what you do is you assemble them in a learning module. So yeah. So that's the way you do it. Now, to get access to the learning module parts of things, that's not freely available. So what you can do, the amount of a course you can create a community, you can make posts, you can have learners make posts, all of that without having to talk to anybody. So you don't, but if you'd like to go further and use the analytics and create peer-reviewed projects, contact me and I can give you admin access.
Okay, I have a question myself, Bill. I would like to ask you, how does the original thought of the New London group, which you were a part of, right, and multiliteracies and also multimodality, how do these perspectives come into play in the new Scholar? And in fact, I was very much used to new learning online, right? So how do they get together? How do they come into play?
Okay, so look, the most immediate way is, as you can see from that student work that I showed you, is the knowledge representations people can make and the artifacts they can make which represent their knowledge are multimodal. In other words, you can put video in line, you can put audio in line. In fact, you can put any other external media object in line, and you can write around it. So one of the great ironies of the web world is we've kind of ghettoized different media. So you do writing on blogs, and you go and you do videos on YouTube, and you do podcasts in podcast platforms, or like Spotify, for example, and they're all kind of separated. So what we've done on the multimodality side of things, Viviane, is we've built this environment where you can put that all in line and you can write around them. So you can build something like the example I showed you, a kind of an essay format, but it's full of media. What's interesting is when we do that is that our students' work is full of these incredible infographics, which are so readily available now. Look up an infographic to explain the zone of proximal development, and it's instantly clear in a way that Vygotsky's paragraph on the zone of proximal development is perhaps not so clear. So they put in infographics, they put in data sets which are manipulable, they put in videos, they put in podcasts, and what we're finding is that our students are creating very different knowledge artifacts which are feel more like the 21st century. That's one thing. The second thing we were interested always in so multimodality was one of the two multis of multiliteracies. The other multi was differences and diversity and the multiplicity of voices and identities there are in the world these days. And what we find is the minute we get students to present their own work, to create projects, to present, put updates in the activity stream based on their own knowledge and research and experience and interests, diversity becomes very, very visible and it has to be negotiated. It has to be discussed. It's a central part of what people are doing. So they're just a couple of good examples. We also have a very, in terms of multilingualism, it's not ready for release yet, but we've built a multilingual mapping tool where it's possible, where we actually to highlight something in a piece of work and get a translation of it as well, where we actually leverage the open API from Google Translate, and we put that into a learning environment. So anyhow, that's not released yet, but we're constantly working on, in the project that we've got, on kind of a next generation of tools that might be useful to people in language learning as well.
Yes, I thought the CG Scholar was fantastic. Really, I was not so familiar with it, but I'm really impressed. So thank you very much. We have lots of people praising and thanking you for the wonderful lecture. There's another question here. Junia, would you like to ask, please?
Yes, before this question, I would like to ask one question, because I think it's related to the one Susanna has just posted. Well, this is something that I would like to know how you, notice any kind of different collaboration or types of collaboration. Do you see any relation to collaboration to the sense of belonging in the community? Because collaborating is not an easy task. So I wonder if the environment and the way the community was created and the sense of belonging in this community helps, let's say, the ones who, some people have a hard time collaborating. So this is just my thoughts. And how do you see this going in terms of the scholar and the people from different parts of the world interacting in the learning environments?
Yes, so collaboration is obviously a very big part of this. And one of the interesting things that we've learned from the internet is to get engagement, you need what's often called social stickiness, which is that people like getting feedback on what they've done. People like the social interaction, and people keep coming back for it. So, the reason why do you keep going back into to Facebook or Twitter or Instagram? It's because you put something there and somebody else likes it. So what's your motivation to contribute? So, these are all very, very dialogical media. So if we're operating in classrooms with monological media, which is listening to the teacher or reading the textbook and silently trying to memorize stuff for the test, we're kind of out of sync with the temper of the time, which is much more collaborative, interactive, social in a lot of ways. So our argument is that, let's create, people frankly like these environments to the point where people even argue they get addicted to them. Well, let's leverage that for education. Let's try to do that. And one of the advantages that's going to be is that their own voices will come through more clearly. What their identities are, what they believe in life, what their life ambitions are. These things about identity will come through as well. So, in terms of Susanna's question there about language teachers, it's about much more production going on, and authentic production. So yeah, there are a couple of answers.
Junia, your sound is off.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So, so Susanna's question, Viviane, so what would be your recommendation to our language teachers in order to improve their online engagement and to get students really into deep learning? So this is the question.
And we get them to produce things, get them to produce multimodal text. So language teachers, there are these juxtapositions between image and text which support language learning. One of the controversial things is get them to use online translation tools as a way to support what they're doing, and talk critically about their limitations and their value and whatever, because I think you'll learn as much from that as you do from excluding them, to be quite frank. So there are a lot of things that can be done in the language area. You know, there are two examples: multimodality, online language tools. There's a lot of stuff which can, but it involves a very, very big change in teacher practices. And you know, most importantly, get students to be producers, get them to produce texts and give each other comment on those texts. You know, don't have the teacher just being the only one who marks the text, so to speak. Get them to, you know, give each other feedback on those texts.
Right, thank you. I don't know if we have any more questions. We still have some minutes. Yeah, this is the question that Bill has just answered, right? Yeah. Okay, there is another one from, what is your view on the relationship between the community design? Oh no, this has already been seen, let's see. Okay. Well, Junia, we can't hear you. Junia, your sound is off.
Yes. Comments here. Okay, the best talk and conversational social learning I've attended, yes. And this is José Henrique Etiboni and Karen Quast, great talk, inspiring and thought-provoking. Well, so yes.
Yes, we agree with them. Thank you so much, Bill. It was nice to see you again. For those who don't know, Universidade Federal de Santa Maria, right, some years ago, had a journey, right, Jornada de Multiletramentos. And Bill Cope and I and Valkyria Montemor from USP, we were there. And so it was a pleasure to see you there. And this is when I met you, in fact, you know, personally, right? And then we saw each other in São Paulo, in Aracaju, too, in other cities. So it's a great pleasure to see you again, to listen to you. Your talks are always inspiring to all of us. So thank you so much, Bill. It was very nice being with you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was very inspiring.
Thank you very much, everybody. Good to be here.
Okay, so thank you, Cope, for being here again, and we hope to meet in person soon, maybe, but we don't know exactly when, but it's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon, and I'm sure that the audiences loved your presentation, so thank you very much for contributing for this conference, okay? So thank you, guys. See you the next meeting later on.
Thank you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.